We are discussing Cox's Bazar railway station, which was opened 2 years ago. It was described as the first iconic railway station in Bangladesh. What would you say is this project's significance, both architecturally and in terms of its impact on the region, which is situated about 300 kilometers south of the country's capital, Dhaka?
Cox's Bazar railway station is part of Bangladesh Railways southeast expansion, as you might know. It links Cox's Bazar to Chattogram and beyond, because it was intended to go beyond Cox's Bazar to connect Ramu and eventually to connect Myanmar, to make it a future trade and transport hub. If you think about Cox's Bazar's touristic and commercial importance, this connection was long overdue. If we speak about architectural significance, to start with this conversation, I would just simplify it in one sentence, that it is basically a contemporary design blended with cultural relevance. It's a shell-inspired form which symbolizes the marine identity of the region. And it acts as a visual gateway to the country's longest beach, Cox's Bazar. And another significance to say, despite architectural resplendence per se, it is hugely engineering challenge that it overcame. Despite a very modest budget, the station was engineered entirely by local hands, and it marks a significant moment for our homegrown capability.
When we spoke some years ago, you told me that for you, the design process itself is far more important than the result. You said it is the journey that should be celebrated. So let's talk about the design process for this project. I understand that from the very beginning, the station's image was inspired by an oyster. So tell me why oyster, and how did you go from an idea to expressing this architecturally?
The project belongs to Bangladesh Railway, as you know. It's a government organization. When we joined the team, the construction had already been awarded to a local engineering company, and we were brought on board as design partners. The initial document, as I was trying to point, that it proposed a literal clamshell as the roof of the station itself. They proposed in the concept paper, a literal clamshell, probably to give the station an iconic form, referencing Cox's Bazar's nature. But as an architect, we just can't take the literal hints as we just get from the client. So we try to understand it, that it is from the top bureaucrats or the top executives of the company or the organization railway. They actually probably intended to give us some hint that we must create something symbolic. I recall those marine life souvenirs, and those objects carry deep memories of Cox's Bazar. And it symbolizes the identity, place, and memory. So I then shared it with the client, and we transformed the literal clamshell into a metaphor. And I proposed a huge steel tubular exoskeleton which echoed a very organic and abstracted logic of a form. So the process actually remains same as I mentioned, I described to you earlier. So we being modernist, core at heart, so we abstracted the literal brief.
You just mentioned exoskeletal structure. So the building, that's what it is. It's an exoskeletal structure. It holds a swooping parasol roof. If you could touch on the choice of the structure and where did you draw the inspirations, and perhaps you were inspired by any international train stations or any particular examples of high-tech architecture, if you could talk about that.
We definitely studied, international and local precedents. In Bangladesh, to say, Kamalapur station, which is the central station of the country in Dhaka, is one of the very few examples of meaningful railway stations or railway architecture, which was interestingly designed by an American architect in the 60s. His name is Robert Bowie. He designed a Kamalapur railway station. It was a very concrete shell structure. It's a big parasol which housed the complex railway functions, terminal functions, railway station functions underneath. So as I grew up in Dhaka, those iconic concrete shells left a deep impression on me. But globally speaking, I looked at how contemporary stations also reinterpreted or reinvented the transit experiences, especially within the context of transport-oriented developments, TODs. And so when we studied that, we decided that we will not go for copying or translating those in overt ways, or as I discussed it with you, just referred that our previous discourse with Vladimir, I would say that I never believed in architecture that has to display regional identity to claim authenticity. I never believed in that. So we, at the very beginning, we decided that we will not display any regional literal things, in overt ways. So that's how we studied the international local, and we tried to remain focused on functional clarity, technical rigor, rather than stylistic borrowing. In marine lives, from oysters to turtles, every being, their outer shell is both expressive and also protective. What they protect is the complex internal systems those creatures have. So that metaphor actually drove us to take decision of abstracting or organically take the logic of a shell form as the station's super roof or expression. The exoskeletal form that reflects both complexity and adaptability, that is also required in a modern transit hub or a train station per se. So it actually inspired us. It allowed us to express structure, that understanding of marine life, those creatures, to express the structure, function, and symbolism in one gesture, in a single gesture. So uniting engineering clarity, regional narrative, all in a meaningful way, not in a decorative way.
Could you talk about any particular innovations used in this project? Where there are any particular challenges regarding its engineering and construction?
I mean, for a Bangladeshi architect like me, to propose a structure of this magnitude, of this span and height, is an ambitious one. I mean, it goes without saying, and possibly one first of its kind. I had to rely on our local partner who built that project, of course, who actually delivered. So the canopy of that magnitude, it's itself, I would say, an innovation. And how did we integrated with concrete structure and the tubular is a composite structural system. The structure is actually a 6-story concrete building underneath that shell. So combining those two, and I was conscious from the very beginning that Cox's Bazar, and particular that region, is exposed to huge coastal wind and and occasional, the historical cyclone risks are there. So so the structure has to be also a very sound one against those calamities. So the hybrid design that we innovated, in fact, strengthened the overall stability of the structure. The canopy itself is also a tropical architectural feature, because the building, 6-story building, as I said, which is covered by the canopy, the big canopy, in fact, acts as a shelter, and it reduces, all the environmental controls to deal with excessive heat. The station remains cool throughout the day, and the cooling load remains very, very low. So that is also goes into the sustainability part, but it's also an innovation, and being modernist and such a modern and contemporary statement in architecture also, goes with the innovation and conceptualization, both hands in hand. Yeah.
And I understand the size of the roof is there not only because of symbolism, but also it collects water, right? Protects from the sun.
Yeah, the water is collected and harvested. Yeah, it's on the sustainability side. Yeah, this building has lot of sustainable features to mention. The vast canopy itself was conceived, as I said, to shade the structure and to help regulate the internal temperature. And that reduces the need for air conditioning. But air conditioning is there, but it really reduces the need. The rainwater is harvested and reused. And we also use huge solar power that supplemented the energy supply.
Let's talk about what's inside the station. So the station's amenities include a hotel, a post office. What else does it offer to passengers and visitors?
The station is designed for long-term usability and self-sufficiency. It includes huge retail areas, multi-purpose hall, restaurants, children facilities, in addition to all the station activities. The Cox's Bazar is a very important place, which is a rising economic commercial center and also a national destination for tourism.
Speaking about your inspirational figures, you named Louis Kahn, which is not surprising given his significances in Bangladesh with his parliament building, which was widely discussed while it was under construction at the time when you were still a student in college. What other inspirations are significant in your architecture?
I always say this, that we are modernists at heart and contextualist in occasions, and so we for this project to refer to or speak about, we remain rooted in modernist values, in clarity of forms, ideas, in systems thinking, in material honesty. It is clearly evident. So, I mean, yeah. Again, I have to mention Khan, because Khan's vision for our parliament building, it is relevant here to say, because Khan's vision for a parliament building, he did not think about the economy of the country. He thought about the aspirations of the project. So that was reflected. So like Khan, I also always believed that our architecture must reflect the aspiration of a people, not the economic limits. And however modest the budget was or the means was, the station was imagined to evoke a collective pride of the country and a symbolism that is rooted in our soil and the clamshell abstraction, if we talk about that, that is shaped by our memory and driven by the purpose and open to the world.
When you speak about your building, to use words and phrases such as simplicity, solidity, weight, uncompromising, no isms, authenticity, a sense of surprise, I follow my instincts, we have been searching for our own expressions, and finally, I want to be critical, not regional. How else would you describe your work, and what kind of architecture do you try to achieve?
This station particularly, to answer to your question, questions our conventional ideas or wisdom about culture, identity, regionalism in architecture. This station questions, challenges the very idea of regionalism or critical regionalism. Should we go for vernacular styles to claim our authenticity? Should we always, take references from regional or cultural aspects to claim authenticity? I never believed so. What architecture should be look like, what architecture should conform to external expectations, of what our architecture should look like. I never subscribed that idea. Whenever we get a project, we just it's our daily culture that we start a project with site, program, value analysis, nothing more, nothing less. We just start with that. So we remain very functional in that sense, if you say, and we try to understand both the functional, and later on we try to understand both functional and also emotional context. So that shared understanding, in fact, becomes the foundation of our design narrative. So it's no ism, nothing that, as I said earlier, and that we ultimately interpret through architecture.